Well, happy Monday. Welcome to In the Word. If you're here in Colorado or any place in the West, I guess you're snowed in today. So here's your opportunity to catch up on what you've missed from In the Word. We are today talking about Jesus' ascension. Oftentimes, we don't think deeply about his ascension or what's implied with it. So we'll look at that today. We're going to look at three passages: Matthew 28, 16 through 20, the Great Commission, Luke 24, 50 to 53, and then Acts chapter 1, verses 3 through 11. So in Matthew 28, 16 through 20, this is occurring in Galilee. So the disciples, the witnesses there, are back in the northern part of Israel. And Jesus begins by talking about or asserting, letting them know that all authority had been given to him in heaven and on earth. In this short video, we don't have time to unpack that, but I'd refer you to Colossians chapter 1, verses 15 through 20, where Jesus is presented as supreme over creation, the heavens, and supreme in his church, the earth. And based on this supremacy, based on the fact that all authority has been given to Jesus, he sends his followers out to all the nations. And I point out that when he means all the nations, I think he's primarily thinking about all the nations without distinction. Up to this point, Jesus' ministry had been limited to Israel and Israel only. There were some instances, for example, with the Syrophoenician woman, where he ministered to those outside the nation. But up to this point, his ministry was primarily to Israel, and now he's sending his disciples out to all the nations, all without discrimination. And he gives them a commission to make disciples. Well, how are they going to do that? Well, Jesus provides two things that compose making disciples. One is baptizing them. So baptism is a external rite that shows an internal reality of your identification with Jesus. The second thing they are to do is teach, teaching them to obey everything that Jesus had commanded. Those two things go together. Sometimes churches spend a lot of time in trying to bring people into baptizing them and neglect the teaching. Other churches focus on the teaching and neglect the evangelism, the baptizing. Jesus' desire, Jesus' will is that both be done. When we look at Luke 24, 50 to 53, we see Jesus not in Galilee, but in Bethany. And he's going to be carried to heaven. So, in my opinion, what happened in Galilee in Matthew 28, 16 through 20 precedes his ascension into heaven and is not witnessed there, but back in Bethany near Jerusalem is where Jesus is taken up into heaven. And he's carried there. And as he goes, he blesses those who are witnessing his ascension. And then they return to Jerusalem and the temple. Interesting in Luke that the Gospel of Luke begins and ends in the temple. That it presents Jesus' ministry to Israel primarily, and it grows from there. So that when we come to Acts chapter 1, verses 3 through 11, we see them in, I'd say, the vicinity of Jerusalem, near Jerusalem. Bethany was within a couple of miles of Jerusalem. It's on the mount, on the shoulder of the Mount of Olives. And a few things to note when you're in Acts chapter 1, verses 3 through 11. This is, in fact, Jesus' ascension as well. He tells them in verse 4 to wait for the Spirit to come. He is going to give them direction to minister in Jerusalem and Judea and Samaria and to the ends of the earth, and they need power, gifting, ability to do that. So he tells them to wait for the Holy Spirit to come and give them power. Now, some people teach that this is referring to a second baptism of the Spirit, but 1 Corinthians 12:13 clearly says that we, in one Spirit we were all baptized into one body. So at the moment of faith, as soon as we believe, we are all baptized in the Spirit. We are identified by the Spirit as being part of Jesus' church, and we are drawn into that. And then Ephesians 10, chapter 4, verses 10 through 12, says that at Jesus' ascension, he distributed gifts to people in order to equip the saints, that's you and I, for the work of ministry. So that was when Jesus ascended, he distributed his gifts to his church through his Spirit, and that even continues to today. And in verse 8, he gives them their marching orders, essentially. Go to Jerusalem, Judea and Samaria, and to all the nations. Again, I think the idea here is all the nations without discrimination, to go to everyone and tell them about Jesus and the salvation that is going to be, that is available through him. In verse 11, Jesus talks about his return, or the angels do. And Jesus will return. He is the anointed one, son of David. He has a throne that he owns. It's not a throne in heaven today. Bible is consistent saying that Jesus is at the right hand of God, not on David's throne. David's throne is an earthly throne. So Jesus will come again, and he is going to establish his throne in Jerusalem, establish his kingdom there. So we have some principles that we can draw from these 3 chapters. The first one is we have work to do. Jesus has given us a commission. He has told us to go and to make disciples, baptizing them and teaching them. So we have work to do. We've been equipped to do that work. When Jesus ascended to heaven, he gave gifts to his church in order that the saints, you and I, may be equipped to do the work of service. So that's our job. It's not the job of a pastor, but it's our job. It's his job, a pastor's job, to equip the church's job to do the work of ministry. So I'd encourage you, brothers and sisters, to do the work that God's giving you to do. Don't worry about the work you can't do. Perhaps you are stuck at home on a day like this with 3 or 4 feet of snow around us. Perhaps you're stuck at home because of illness, or it's just hard for you to get around. The Lord has given you a ministry of prayer. Did you know that the apostles' main ministry, if you look in Acts chapter 6, verse 4, they devoted themselves to 2 things, to prayer and ministry of the word. So if you can't get out due to weather conditions or because of health or strength, you can pray. You can pray in behalf of the church. You can pray for those who are yet to be saved, God's elect who have not yet bowed their knee. And I encourage you to do what you can, whatever your gift is, whatever your gifting is. Become aware of that. If you don't know what your gift is, email me at drdan@theofaith.org, and I'll send you an inventory. You can do a survey, determine what your gifts are, and then look and see, given your gifts, where you can use them right in front of you, in your church, in your family, in your neighborhood. So, brothers and sisters, we have work to do. The Lord has equipped us for our work. And next time, we'll see that Jesus holds his church accountable, us as individuals and us as collectively, for the work that he has us to do. So God bless you. I pray that this is the beginning of a great week and that you really see God answering prayers in extraordinary ways. God bless you, brothers and sisters.